What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Muay Diaz Combat Podcast. This episode, I really want to jump into the BMF title, the baddest motherfucker, and what that title means, and the lineage of it, and how it all got started. I know we all think it happened in 2019, November 2nd, 2019, Madison Square Garden. Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal was the inaugural BMF title. And it was a great fight. Unfortunately, he got stopped due to cuts in the fourth round. Jorge Masvidal is the inaugural BMF champion. But this title goes back so much further. And I'm going to get into that. But before I do that, after this past pay-per-view card, 326, between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira for the BMF title, there was a lot of backlash and a lot of people coming out saying that shouldn't have been a BMF title. And after rewatching the fight and looking at the lineage and how this whole thing got started, I agree. I think that Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira could have been easily a number one contender fight, because the way that fight played out, which I had picked Max to win. I thought Max was going to go out there. And I thought Charles, though, was going to be willing to stand toe-to-toe with him and engage in that type of fight, because that's what the BMF title is all about. Engaging hand-to-hand, toe-to-toe, on the feet, and whoever is the baddest motherfucker who's willing to stay there should be the champion. Charles Oliveira went about it in a different way. He used his grappling, superior grappling, and out-grappled Max Holloway 5-0. Now, I truly believe that if they really wanted to make this fight, it should have been a number one contenders fight, a co-main event underneath a title fight, and the winner would have got the winner of Ilya versus Justin Gaethje for the undisputed title. Sorry, guys. That's my personal opinion, how this fight should have went. I don't believe this should have been a BMF title fight, even though I think Charles is a bad motherfucker. But when it comes to the BMF title, that's not the type of fight we are expecting or looking to see. You know, it started in November 2nd, 2019, with Nate Diaz, coming off a win and saying, there's a lot of, he had beat Pettis. He came off the win against Pettis. They gave him the mic. He's like, there's not a lot of bad motherfuckers out there. There's not a bunch of people that are doing the thing the way that I like to see them done. He goes, but there's one guy, Jorge Masvidal, who had a great fight, and he called him out. And that's when that whole thing started, right? And Jorge Masvidal ends up winning that first BMF title fight at Madison Square Garden. And then, the lineage goes down. After Nate and Masvidal, you have Dustin Poirier, the Diamond, one of the best to ever do it, former interim lightweight champion, taking on Justin Gaethje, the Highlight, who is no stranger to getting in just knockout, drag-out brawls. They go to fight. They go to war. Gaethje wins with a fucking massive head kick, knocks Dustin Poirier out. He wins the BMF title. He puts it on the line at UFC 300 against Max Bless Holloway. Max Holloway breaks his nose in the first round with that spinning back kick. He's beating him 4-0 into the fifth round. He's beating him the fifth round. Before the 10-second clap, after Justin Gaethje does his Rolling Thunder and misses, Max Holloway points to the ground, says, "Let's go," engages him. Lets Gaethje have an opportunity to knock one last blow to retain as the BMF champion. Max Holloway scores the biggest, greatest knockout in UFC history because of what it was, what it meant on the biggest stage at UFC 300, up 4 or 5-0, and then gets that 1 second left knockout and puts him out cold against Justin Gaethje. Everyone loved that. That is the embodiment of being the baddest motherfucker. Like, even though I'm up, I'm going to stand toe-to-toe with you and give you a chance to land something, but I'm going to beat you to it. And Max Holloway did that. Max Holloway turns around 2 weeks ago at UFC 326, takes on Charles Oliveira for the title. And as soon as that first engagement happened, Max Holloway lands a shot, Oliveira didn't like it, and then it was right to the grappling. You know, and throughout this whole broadcast, Oliveira was getting the better of the exchanges on the feet, but that's only because Oliveira had already put him in on his back 3 times, 3 rounds in a row, and Max couldn't get up. You know, so I love Charles Oliveira, but I just don't think that that is the way you want to win the BMF title. And I want to go back to the nexus, the genesis of the whole BMF title. To me, it started back in 2007. I think it was late February 2007. Takanori Gomi was the bad boy of Pride FC. And if y'all don't know what Pride FC is, Pride FC was the bigger, better version of the UFC back in the day. Back in the late 2000s, going into the early teen of the 2000s, Pride FC was the bigger, better promotion in the mixed martial arts world. I used to stay up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to watch the Pride Grand Prix, the New Year's Day cards they would have in Japan. It was absolutely amazing. Some of my favorite fighters of all time came out of Pride. You know, your Anderson Silva's, Rampage Jackson's, Fedor Emelianenko's, Big Nog, Little Nog, Crow Cop. Jesus Christ, man, the list goes on and on. So many great fighters came out of Pride and then ended up coming to the UFC. Your Dan Henderson's, your Jesus Christ, Alistair Overeem's, all those guys came over from Pride to the UFC when the UFC eventually bought them out. And then they ended up just buying like a library of their fights, and then they would get their contracts and then bring them to the UFC. But Pride in those days was the top of the top. And at that time, there was a Japanese guy named Takanori Gomi, who was the bad boy of Japan. He was like he was the Nick Diaz of Japan. Didn't follow the rules, did whatever he wanted. He was sponsored by Punishment, who was by Tito Ortiz at the time, had that brand. He was the bad boy of Japan and Pride FC. And then February 24, 2007, Pride wanted to come to the United States and do a show on American soil, and they did it in Los Angeles, California, and he took on Nick Diaz, the original fucking bad boy of MMA, Stockton's own Nick Diaz. And if you guys haven't followed Pride, Pride had a different set of rules. So as the rules that we know now, it was for championship fights, it was 5-minute rounds, regular fights, 3 5-minute rounds. In Pride, it was the first round was 10 minutes. And for championship fights, you'd have 2 5-minute rounds if necessary. So you'd have a 10-minute round, 5-minute round, and if necessary, another 5-minute round. So in this fight, Nick Diaz taking on Takanori Gomi, the Fireball Kid, and Takanori comes out of the gate, takes Nick Diaz down. He's beating him up. He lets him up. They're at distance. Nick Diaz starting to pepper him, and then Takanori lands a huge right hand, drops Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz goes down. You know, Takanori starts punishing him on the ground, Nick Diaz finds space, gets back up, and he starts to surge back in the last, I think it was already at the 6-7 minute mark of the first round. Granted, it was 10-minute rounds, mind you guys. He comes back, and he is just peppering him. Double jab, right hand, rip into the body, just getting the better. And you can tell Takanori Gomi is starting to fold in this fight. The round ends. Takanori Gomi comes out, just spitting fire. Nick Diaz comes out, matching him in his energy and his style, just ripping shots to the body. He's cut open big under his right eye, and it's bleeding bad. And then he's swelled up over his eyebrows like the Diaz brothers always do. And you can see in that fight, in that second round, that Takanori Gomi does not want to be there. He is sucking wind. He's running out of gas. And he has this fucking Mexican-American zombie in Nick Diaz that just will not quit coming forward. And he is peppering him. Takanori Gomi is landing big right hands, big left hands, and then looking at the ref like, hey, check the cut. They get into like an entanglement, a grappling position against the ropes because they were in a ring, not a cage. And Gomi is looking at the ref like, yo, telling him something in Japanese because the referee was Japanese. They stop the fight. They break the fight. They check him. The cut is a deep gouge under his right eye. But it's under the eye, so it's not leaking into the eye. So he can't, it's not messing up his vision, blurring his vision by any means. The referee lets it go, and Nick Diaz just starts coming out, pouring the pressure, hurting him up to the top, down to the body. Takanori Gomi goes for a fucking just last minute takedown. He hits the takedown, and immediately Nick Diaz throws his left foot up, grabs his left foot under his arm into a go-go plata position. At first, it looked like he was going to go for omoplata, but then he brings it all over Takanori Gomi's head. Takanori Gomi lifts his neck up, and he slips his ankle foot under his neck, and he pulls down, brings his other foot over the top, gets his submission win at 3 minutes, 51 seconds in the second round. It was probably one of the best, greatest fights I've ever seen in my life at that time in 2007. And this was before Nick Diaz went to Strikeforce and became, Strikeforce welterweight champion and all that. But this was the genesis of that. But that fight not only is the genesis of the BMF, because it was such a great fight, but Brett Okamoto did a story on ESPN, and he released it March 4, 2026. Before the, was it 2026? It was before that because the inaugural BMF title happened in 2019. But he had spoke with Nate Diaz, the younger brother. Nick is the older brother. Nate is the younger brother. He spoke with Nate about how this whole BMF thing happened and how it was started. And Nate told Brett Okamoto that in high school, when they were kids, that Nick Diaz was dating this girl. She was like a very good-looking girl, and a lot of people wanted to get at her, but she wanted to be with Nick. Well, all these guys, these like football players and all these other bigger dudes were trying to go at her, and Nick didn't like it. So one night, they went to a party, and Nick Diaz walks into this party, him and just Nate. And Nick goes around and says, hey, which one of y'all is the baddest motherfucker in here? And then one of the football players, I guess, who had been going at his girlfriend, stood up and said, I am. And then Nick beat the absolute shit out of him in front of everyone. And after it was all said and done, he goes, no, I'm the baddest motherfucker now. You can't write that shit. Like, that is some of the coldest shit that you could put into like a movie, a film, whatever you want to call it, however you want to do it. That is like some of the most stone cold shit you can do, right? So that was the nexus, the genesis of the BMF title. And that's why Nate, when he's called out, after he beat Conor McGregor and when he called out Jorge Masvidal, that's how the BMF, the baddest motherfucker, came into existence, because he saw his older brother go into a fucking party and say, who is the baddest motherfucker in here? And he fucking beat the shit out of him and said, you know what, now I'm the baddest motherfucker in here. So that's the genesis, the nexus, whatever you want to call it, of the BMF title. I really don't like the way that Oliveira won that title, even though he did win. He is a bad motherfucker. But if you're going to fight for this title, you have to fight in a certain way and be able to give the fans what they want. That was not a fight that the fans wanted to see in that way. If Charles would have been like, throw the grappling out the window and me and Max are just going to trade in the middle of the octagon, that would have been a great fight. I mean, Oliveira can knock people out. He's knocked people. He's hurt people. He's dropped people. But that's not the fight that we wanted to see. Even though I give all much love, respect to Charles Oliveira for his performance, but that's not a BMF title worthy fight. Because if you look at it and Oliveira is a BMF now, he's not going to get the next shot. Say that's the style he's going to fight, knowingly that's the style it's going to be, then it just turns into a regular fight. Because then who are you going to match him up with? BSD, who is a grappler in that division. Armin, who he's already fought. Armin just called him out to a grappling match. Do we really want to see grappling matches for the BMF title? No, I don't. Absolutely not. So, I don't know what they do with this title moving forward, because even Alexander Volkanovski, the great Alexander the Great Volkanovski said, you know, if this is how the BMF titles are going to be fought like, then don't be surprised if the title goes away, you know. And that's real talk. The only other way you can bring it back to prominence, to what it should be, my man Joaquin Buckley put out a great video, and he goes, if that's gonna be the way they're gonna fight for the BMF title, he goes, they should take it away and bring it back in the old style. He goes, keep the BMF, but let everyone who thinks that they're the baddest motherfucker in the UFC, whether you're a heavyweight or a flyweight, sign up. Tournament style like the old days. 16-man, eight-man brackets on each side, whether you're heavyweight, flyweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, you know, featherweight, whatever you are. And then whoever meets at the end, that's the baddest motherfucker in the company. I would not be opposed to that. But with all these sanctionings and all the athletic commissions, it'll never happen unless they do it somewhere. Hell, we can call up Lakota Nation, Dina Nation, and do a fucking UFC. If they're going to do a UFC in the White House, do a UFC from Lakota Nation. Do a UFC from Navajo Nation. And do unsanctioned 16-man tournaments from there and really find out who the baddest motherfucker is. That's my take on the BMF title and the rundown and all the backlash after Oliveira and Max Holloway. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Because I think this could be a really good title that they could keep going, but it has to be the baddest motherfuckers. It has to be the guys who are not going to grapple. They're not there to wrestle. They want to stand in the middle of the octagon and throw leather with those 4-ounce gloves for as long as it goes until one of those motherfuckers are knocked out. Let me know what you guys think. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so you get all the notifications. Watch fights, drink pints. See you guys on the next one. Peace.